some people may get. Finger wrestling, okay? Very simple. I'm going into wrist extension and stretching back and forth. So I am stretching one side, but I'm strengthening the other. So I'm really going after those tendons. So I can go into the wrist and work into the fingers. All right. Cool. And you can get a little snaky into it to more segmentally kind of work through the tissues. Plus it looks cool. Okay, the yogis will like that one. Sweet. All right. I'm going to show you another little really high-tech exercise. The equipment is really hard to find, but if you make the effort, you can probably pick it up anywhere. It's an elastic band. I know. So this is coming back to, we do gripping all day, so we are strengthening the palm, we're strengthening all the flexors. The extenders tend to get neglected. So how often are we adding resistance while we're opening the hand? It's not that I'm not a huge fan, but functionally, when we grip something, we're usually pushing and pulling. We're not sitting there doing repeated gripping. So if I'm retraining the extenders of the fingers and the forearm, I'm going to hold it and I'm going to move my shoulder and my arm around. So I'm going to do some rotations up here, integrate it with the shoulder. I'm going to open it here. I'm going to open it here. I might come way back in here. Okay, I'll do some, right? Basically do it when they start to burn up and they get tired, you're done. So very simple. You don't have to sit there and count 3 sets of 10. Just put it around the end of the fingers like so. And this is one of those broccoli elastic bands. It's a good, nice stiff one. So, but find one that you can control comfortably. Do some rotations. You might feel a little grindy or poppy in the joints just by doing this, and that's okay. Add some breathing. Okay, work back in here. The more balance we have around the forearm, the finger, and the hands, the greater the strength is going to be. Because if we have an imbalance, our nervous system is going to know this, and it's going to put the brakes on. You're going to lose power output because your nervous system's there to protect you, and it will only let you have as much power that it feels or deems safe. So you have to make sure there's balance and mobility on either side. So if everybody wants to check to see what that little Benel Littler, check some wrist extension to see if it's changed, if you're following along. If not, you can do this later. But I always check your work. Okay. Wrist flexors, pin stretch, did it. Good. All right, I'm gonna take you over to a wall. Where's an ideal wall? I know. No, I'm gonna take you to the floor. All right, so we're gonna do some floor work. I'm gonna show everybody my wrist mobility sequence that I like to do, integrate. I'll do it from the side so everybody sees. So, I can use my body weight to press into the floor here. Get a little stretch. I'm really splaying the fingers and I'm gripping the ground, so I'm adding some strength. I'm not just passively falling into the joints. I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that the tendons and the muscles are working through this long range. When I get a good stretch, I'm going to lift them up, rotate them, pin them back down. Okay? So I'm going to isometrically hold those wrist extenders into that short range that they may have been stretched out. When I come back around, I'm going to segmentally flex the fingers and go down here, okay? So I can press on the back of the wrist. Then I'm going to curl up, hold it, spin it, and go back out. Okay? So I'll show everybody on the front here, if you can see my hands. So I'm here. I'm going to roll them in, so I'm lifting, holding, curling, pressing on the backs of the wrist. This is going to be a little uncomfortable, so be very careful if you're not used to pressing on the backs of the wrists. Curl back up, curl back under, okay? So a nice little loaded mobility exercise that you can do. That Benel Littler test, you can even do it as a push-up, or you can even press. So just holding, using your body weight. I'll get a little closer so you can see my right hand. tuck those knuckles under and then just hold and press onto that. So you can get in a little extra stretching through the tendons, okay? You can even play with different positions to feel different stretches. Cool? Now we've created some mobility. What do we gotta do? Add some strength. So in the same position, now we can do wrist levers. So I'm lengthening and strengthening that new range. It's just like calf raises, only I'm doing it for the forearm. Anybody who's into hand balancing, this is really, really important. One, that you have proper wrist extension so you can get into the position effectively. And two, that you have strength in the wrist flexors in that long range and wrist extenders so you can stabilize the wrist. When we're on our hands, this becomes this. And if this foot collapses when we're standing, our knee buckles in, we can't do it. If our hand is collapsing in or we can't get into it, that's usually a huge limitation where most people fall short on the handstand, is wrist mobility and strength. So if you want to get good at handstands, you need to have a strong foundation, which becomes your hands. Okay? Coming back to the backs of the wrist, you can roll on top of it. So again, you're just getting to the neutral and you're going to the long range of the wrist extenders. Be very careful and do this really slow, okay? So that you don't overstrain the ligaments in the wrists. The tricky part with the wrists and what makes them a little bit difficult to treat is when you sprain a ligament in the wrist and these joints, these little carpal bones become hypermobile, they're loose forever. So it's not like an ankle where you can just strengthen the muscles around the wrist to try and compensate for the lax ligaments. Most of the muscles attached to these bones, but there's nothing really very supportive. There's small muscles around it, but nothing that's going to keep a bone locked into place. So once you get a hypermobile wrist, you got to tape that up, forever. You got to do some extra support stuff. You can strengthen, but it's always going to be shifting around. Okay, so really important that that gets to get done. All right. Wrist roller, eccentric loading. Cool. If you want, coming back into some of these positions, the more load you add into it, the more challenging they become. So most people are going to be pretty good just on the knees. You can go into a kind of a short plank. If you want to come up into a long plank and work your way up and down, sweet, you can do that. All right. But it doesn't have to get super complicated. We're all going to come into some kind of elbow or wrist issues somewhere along the lines. But if you know a couple little pointers and tricks to combat it, it doesn't have to be difficult. If you are getting, I'm going to show you one last thing before we go. If you are getting tingling, or if you're getting kind of this weird pulley sensation along the arm into the armpit, it might be nerve. And you might not feel it right there, but it just might be restricted, so your body's just protecting you against that. Nice little nerve exercise. You're going to pull the wrist back, open the chest, bring the chin down, look up towards the ceiling. Now you might feel a little pull, a little tingle in that right hand. So if I'm looking up and to the right, I might feel a little extra tingle in that right hand. And when you look down towards the left, it goes away. So you can do a little bit of a nerve floss here. Okay, open that up on this side. Because those nerves can get trapped anywhere along those lines of tightness. If you're doing a lot of gripping, those nerves probably aren't sliding like they're supposed to. If the nerves aren't happy, the muscles will not be happy either. So you need to make sure that there's good lymphatic drainage, there's good blood flow, and there's good nerve conduction. If any of those things are disrupted, the nervous system will try and protect those because they help with, one, they own the muscles, they control the muscles, they feed the muscles, and they clean the muscles. So any of those systems, if they get disrupted, it's going to cause this excessive muscle tone. And just going in and just massaging muscles without, again, adding some new strength or some new mobility into it, a lot of the tightness comes back because the body just might be protecting something. So we need to make sure that we know what we are kind of unloading or what we are trying to correct but make sure that we give it some new input so it doesn't come back, or we don't destabilize the system. Cool? That is pretty much a quick and easy self-assessment, and I think some really good stuff that you can do with the hand. It doesn't have to be super complicated. If we approach the body, any body part, relatively the same way, go after some joint mobility, do some soft tissue release, do some stretching, do some mobility, do some strengthening, and make sure it's integrated with the kinetic chain, then it doesn't really have to get much more complicated than that. Unless you have some serious injuries that need a good, thorough orthopedic assessment, or you have real pain, get that assessed. If you've got some tightness, some restrictions, you can easily combat that with home exercises and soft tissue techniques that you can do on your own. So that's all I got today. I hope this was informative. For those of you who want a more of an understanding or more in depth on how to strengthen the hands, I do have a handstand workshop available at tomswells.com. For those of you who attended, message me personally. I will create a code, a 25% off discount code for the handstand workshop. It will be a timed, limited for the next, what's today? Till Friday. I'll leave the code up. So 25% off. It's a full step-by-step tutorial on if you are interested in doing the handstand or just want to get stronger in general for your hands, your wrists, your elbows, your joints. If you have any of those restrictions, I go through full self movement assessment that you can critique on your own, how to step-by-step go through some weak links, and then at the end of creating or eliminating all the weak links, then I go into all the progressions of how to safely accomplish a freestanding handstand into a potential press. So that's up there. It's all videoed. There's a work manual that you can walk through, print off, make notes as you go. But once you've got the membership, it's yours for life. So let me know if anybody's interested in the handstand workshop. Shoot me a message and I will hook you up.